In the early 1910s, a police laboratory in Lyon, France, began formalizing a system to solve crimes using strict scientific observation. The laboratory was run by Dr. Edmond Locard. He recognized that human observation is flawed, but physical matter does not lie. He formalized this into a single, unyielding rule: every contact leaves a trace. For Locard, these traces were highly physical. If an intruder enters a room, they leave behind a fingerprint, a drop of sweat, or a carpet fiber. They also take something with them: dust on their shoes or a scratch on their arm. Solving a crime relies entirely on an investigator's ability to discover these tiny physical artifacts and correctly interpret them without destroying the evidence in the process. Over a century later, Locard's exchange principle applies identically to the digital domain. When two digital objects interact, they exchange data. Consider an attacker executing a SQL injection against a corporate website. That digital traffic crosses a local router, hits the target network's firewall, passes through a web server, and finally executes on a database. Every node in that chain logs a trace of the interaction. But digital artifacts present a unique physics problem. Unlike a physical fingerprint, opening a file, copying a log, or simply leaving a machine powered on alters the underlying binary data. The act of observation inherently damages the trace. The IT professional must extract a highly volatile string of code and somehow transform it into unassailable legal proof. A successful investigation requires strict, mathematically provable extraction methodologies that directly align with rigorous legal standards. Before an investigator captures a single byte of data, they have to know exactly where that data is going to end up. This matrix breaks down the 4 specific venues that govern an organization's incident response. Each demands a different level of technical rigor. Administrative and operational investigations resolve internal issues, like a policy violation or a server outage. These carry the loosest standards of evidence, rarely going to court, and often rely on the voluntary surrender of devices by employees. Civil investigations resolve disputes between 2 private parties. To win a civil case, the data must meet the preponderance of the evidence standard, meaning the digital trace proves a claim is simply more likely to be true than not. Criminal investigations involve law enforcement pursuing a violation of the law. This demands the absolute highest technical standard. The evidence must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, leaving no other logical conclusion for the data's existence. Regulatory bodies and industry standard councils, like the payment card industry, operate similarly to legal courts. Failing to provide accurate forensic data here results in severe financial sanctions and revoked operating licenses. The legal burden of proof directly dictates exactly how strict the IT team must be when handling the affected hardware. If the investigation requires legal action, the extracted data must survive the scrutiny of a judge before a jury is ever allowed to see it. To be admitted into open court, digital evidence must meet 3 absolute prerequisites. It must be relevant to the fact at hand, it must be material to the specific case, and it must be competent, meaning it was obtained legally. This creates an immediate legal paradox. In a courtroom, a machine-generated server log is technically hearsay. It is an unverified statement made outside of court by a computer, and courts generally reject hearsay. To get the log into evidence, the investigator invokes the business records exception. An administrator testifies that the system log was generated automatically, at the time of the event, as part of the organization's routine documented business practice. Documentary evidence faces further restrictions. The best evidence rule requires the original file to be presented in court, not a printed description. And the parole evidence rule ensures that a written contract supersedes any verbal agreements regarding that data. The raw technical data holds 0 value to an organization if it fails to survive these specific legal filters. To ensure data is legally competent, forensic technicians follow strict guidelines established by the International Organization on Computer Evidence. The primary directive of media analysis is that investigators must never access hard drives from a live running system. Navigating the file system changes metadata, immediately compromising the trace. Instead, the machine is safely powered down and the storage media is physically removed from the hardware. The drive is then connected to a dedicated forensic workstation using a hardware write blocker. This physical adapter intercepts and blocks any signal from the workstation that attempts to write data back to the original drive. With the drive safely connected, the analyst instantly calculates a cryptographic hash of the entire device. This acts as a mathematical fingerprint of the original state of the data. They then create a bitwise forensic image, an exact bit-for-bit duplicate of the original drive. The analyst hashes this duplicate image, comparing it to the original. An identical match proves the duplication process was flawless. The original evidence is sealed away. By proving that the forensic copy mathematically matches the sealed original, the analyst satisfies the court that the trace remains perfectly unaltered. Static hard drives are relatively simple, but network traffic and system memory contain volatile data. Powering down the machine purges RAM, instantly destroying the evidence. To capture live network data legally, technicians use a hardware tap or configure a span port on a switch. This securely mirrors the packets to a forensic drive without interrupting the actual flow of traffic. For RAM, they execute trusted forensic tools that generate a direct memory dump file, carefully extracting the data currently active in the processor. Even these live, highly volatile captures must be immediately cryptographically hashed to lock in their state at the exact second of acquisition. But the math alone is not enough. A judge and jury cannot read binary code. They rely entirely on human testimony to authenticate where the drive came from. This requires a chain of custody. It is a rigorous, unbroken physical ledger documenting who collected the evidence, exactly when they took it, where it was stored, and why it was transferred to the next handler. A single missing signature or an unlogged transfer immediately nullifies the most technically perfect forensic hash. If you cannot prove where the drive was yesterday, the data on it today is inadmissible. Scaling these technical processes across millions of files requires an enterprise-wide legal structure. This 9-step flowchart outlines the electronic discovery reference model. It starts proactively with information governance and identification, ensuring corporate data is organized and relevant files are pinpointed the moment litigation becomes likely. Next comes preservation and collection. This is where the IT department actually deploys the write blockers, extracts the memory dumps, and secures the hashes. Processing, review, and analysis cut the raw data down, filtering out irrelevant packets and legally shielding anything covered by attorney-client privilege. Finally, production and presentation format the verified data securely so it can be shared with opposing counsel and displayed cleanly in court. The EDRM functions as a strict industrial conveyor belt, turning a chaotic server log into a formal, binding legal disclosure. A successful cybersecurity investigation requires two parallel tracks: absolute scientific precision matched by unassailable legal documentation. Locard's principle holds true on a hard drive just as it does in a physical room. The trace of the attacker is always there, hidden in the registry or buried in a packet capture, waiting to be found. But the most conclusive digital artifact in the world cannot save an organization if the procedure used to acquire it is compromised. In the realm of digital investigations, the data alone is never enough. The process itself is the proof.